everybody. This is Jackie here with the Sexy Politico. I'm here with Matt Witten. He's a TV writer, he's a novelist, and he's written for a lot of different shows, some that I've actually watched, such as House and Pretty Little Liars and Law and Order. Matt has written 6 novels, including The Necklace from Ocean View Publishing, and his latest book called Killer Story, which is set in the world of true crime podcasting, which I think everybody in this country has at least one true crime podcast that they have listened to or are currently listening to at the moment. So, Matt, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself, your background, and what got you interested in writing a fiction book about true crime podcasts?
Well, grew up in Baltimore. Started writing poetry when I was 6. It was about how the Baltimore Orioles were going to defeat the hated New York Yankees in basketball and baseball. And then I started writing plays in high school, and I got a crush on my 10th grade drama teacher, and she suggested that I write a play. And I kept writing plays until I was in my 30s, and then I switched to writing novels because I decided my favorite form of entertainment was to put my feet up on the sofa, kick back, and read a murder mystery. So I thought, why don't I write a murder mystery? So I did. I wrote 4 of them. And then, it's kind of out of the blue, I got an offer to come write for Homicide, the TV show Homicide, and then the TV show Law and Order, and moved to Los Angeles, where I wrote for TV for about 20 years. And then I decided, you know what? I really want to write some more novels. I love writing novels. Writing for TV is a lot of fun too, but if you want to write from your heart and write what you really care about the most, writing for TV isn't necessarily the way to do it. Writing for TV, you're writing someone else's vision, usually.
Yeah.
So I started writing The Necklace, which I loved. It was a story that I really cared about. And then I started writing the novel Killer Story, which just came out. And as to how I got the idea to write a story about a true crime podcast, I'll tell you there are 2 reasons. The first reason is that I'm just really interested in journalists. I'm really interested in like all the people that I know that are in their 20s and their 30s who are passionate about getting into the journalism field, despite it being kind of a crazy field to get into because, newspapers going bankrupt, journalists are losing their jobs. It's almost as crazy as me deciding to become a writer when I was in my 20s. So I look at these people and I admire their idealism and their passion. And it's so important that they tell the stories that are so important for us. And it's like, how do they do it? Why do they get into it? How do they keep doing it? And then they get fired all the time or laid off because their newspapers go down.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I've had that experience myself writing for TV. If you write for TV long enough, you're going to get laid off. You're going to get, or the polite way they say it in TV is you don't get your contract renewed.
Right.
And it might be because the show goes bankrupt. It might be because the show has a new head writer who hires all new people. But whatever the reason, it feels crummy. So that's sort of where I'm coming from that angle of it. So I created this main character who she's just been laid off from 3 newspaper jobs in a row. She's had to chase all over the country to get a new newspaper job. She's taken her boyfriend, now her fiance, all over the country. He's getting a little sick of it. He supported her so far. And she's like, and now she's about to get laid off from her 4th job in a row. So she's going nuts. She's trying to figure out some way to save her job. So she convinces her editor that she's going to start a true crime podcast about this one particular case that she's connected to, and it's going to help the newspaper financially. So she's desperate to keep her job. So that's one angle of what I got interested in, just what's going on with newspapers. And the other side of it is that journalists, because they're having a tough time financially, it's like getting clicks can be as important as getting the truth. They really need to get a lot of people watching their stuff, reading their stuff, or else they're going to get laid off. That's just how it goes. And can you imagine the pressures on you if you're a journalist where you really have to deliver? So maybe you start to cut some corners in order to deliver. So I'll just, finish up by saying the one specific show that really got me thinking about this was the Netflix documentary Making a Murderer, which was a true crime documentary about two people that were supposedly maybe innocent of this murder that they had been convicted for and were doing time in prison for. Well, in my opinion, one of them really might be innocent. He has a mentally, I forget the word, but mental disabilities, and maybe he's innocent. The other guy, in the documentary, when I watched it, I was like, oh my God, this guy really is innocent. This is a total miscarriage of justice. There's no way he should be in prison. And then after the documentary, I start to read and watch these other people talking about it. Other people created podcasts about the documentary. And then I read about it. And it turned out that the people that made that documentary, they left out of the documentary everything that would make them look guilty. They just didn't put it in. They just
Yeah.
left out all the stuff. It was crazy, just so that they would have a hit. And so that made me think about the lengths that journalists might go to in order to be successful and do some things that we might not necessarily think were moral, but I would feel are understandable.
It would be the difference between journalism and entertainment. And where does a true crime podcast land on that spectrum?
Right. Well, if I were doing a true crime, if I was had a true crime podcast, I would probably do anything I could to make it be as entertaining as possible, and I would be tempted to, uh, I'd be tempted to do evil things. I mean, let's say, that if you make it look like, person X really might have killed, this person, then, and if you can really make it look that way, then you're going to get an extra million clicks. You might say, well, it's possible person X did it. And maybe if I shade it, I won't lie, but I might leave out some stuff or kind of exaggerate some stuff. I'm not, who knows? And besides, maybe if I make it look like person, if I get a million more people, maybe the police will look into the case again and they'll find out who really did it. So I think I'd be tempted to say some things that might not be quite right in order to get that extra million clicks.
Mm. Why do you think true crime podcasts and true crime TV shows have become so popular in the recent years, especially after the pandemic? Everybody seems to have a true crime show or a true crime podcast that they follow.
Yeah, I think that in general, the standard traditional answer for why do people like murder mysteries is it because at the end we find the bad guy and then we have a sense of closure and then the universe seems okay again. Because in general in life, the universe is so chaotic. Good people, bad things happen to them, and why? And there just seems to be no rhyme and reason to life. But in a murder mystery, there's a state of confusion. A horrible thing happens, but at the end, oh, good, we got the bad guy. They're in jail. Okay, we're all set. And I think you combine that with how successful podcasts have been in general in the last, few years, that I think you combine those two trends and you get the success of true crime podcasts.
So there are definitely some critics who have argued that crime shows and true crime podcasts are a bit immoral because you either have the victims' families, the person who was killed, their families aren't involved, or they haven't been asked permission for their loved one's story to be used, and it reopens an old wound, or the killer is given a different, like, there's all these different moral and ethical issues that come with these TV shows and these movies, especially like when Dahmer came out on Netflix, and you have all of the people who were involved with Dahmer or the victims' families who were like, nobody told us this was going to come out, and it became the sensation of the summer. Do you see any ethical issues such as that can come with true crime and things of that nature?
Yeah, I would think so. I think that that makes a lot of sense. In making a murderer, for instance, you're making the prosecutors look like idiots, and I don't think they were idiots. Certainly not as regards the main guy. And in terms of victims' families, yeah, I guess I've read the same kind of things that you have about victims' families feeling victimized all over again, by the news story. And then you get something like Dahmer. I think I read, and you can probably confirm if I'm right or not, that some of the families of the victims were very upset because it was in order to make it a fun TV show, they changed some of the facts, and that they didn't like having the facts about their dead loved ones inaccurate, and sometimes put their loved ones in, I think I read, in an even worse light.
Well, then
So yeah,
there's also the trend in these true crime shows to make the killer sexy. And they're like, why are we idolizing this murderer over and over and over again? You have Dahmer being sexy and people are like going, "Ooh, Dahmer."
no, interesting. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I mean, bad guys are always very interesting, and they can be sexy. I mean, it's
Well, they can be,
infuriating to
but
me.
but they're changing what the person looked like, and they're putting like Zac Efron as Dahmer, and
Yeah,
you know, he's considered one of the sexiest men alive, and they're like, why are you making this cold-blooded killer be played
yeah.
by one of the sexiest men alive?
Right. No, it's interesting because I think in a way we're attracted to bad guys because they really live out a part of us that we keep repressed,
True.
and so there's something attractive about them. So I understand the impulse to have them like, go with that all the way. Is it bad for society to have, role models in a certain way who are pretty sexy and dark? Um, yeah, maybe. I don't know. Here's what drives me nuts, okay? I'll tell you what drives me nuts is that I think I think bad guys can often be, I mean, this is a cliche. Bad guys are often, really fun. More fun as characters in literature. And I know from
Yes.
writing, sometimes it's really fun to write a bad guy, and it's fun to read a bad guy sometimes.
Oh yeah.
And okay, so like for instance, Donald Trump, worst guy in the world, worst guy in the world. But like he's so interesting. I click on the articles about him, even though I feel like I shouldn't because I'm encouraging the newspapers to, put more articles about him on there. It's like it's interesting. He's so evil that is just absolutely stunning. I mean, I guess I've gotten a little sick of him, but still, he's evil, and I just want to watch him being, brought down. And I'm just, it's just, I just wish, and I think he's also a good example of somebody who's really, really terrible for the culture. I just think he's coarsened the culture. I think he's made it horrible. I think he's made it okay to be horrible. I mean, I look at him and I said, a guy this horrible can actually have millions of people voting for him, really? And it just upends my thought about what people are like. So, even though I find him interesting character, I do find it horrible that he is so interesting and so popular. So maybe in a way I would feel that way about. I haven't seen the Dahmer series myself, but maybe I would feel that way about the Dahmer character too. Wow, he's interesting. I can't take my eyes off him. Some, to a certain, but it's
But
kind of evil.
if my loved
Oh,
one had
yeah.
been killed by the real Dahmer, I would I might be more upset by
Oh,
that.
oh my gosh. Yes, yes, yeah, that's really true for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you like the TV show You, by the way? Have you ever seen it?
I've seen a couple episodes of it. I have small children and if
No.
I can I have very small children. My youngest is 1, and so if I can get him down by 9:30, I usually pass out.
Yeah. Well, I I hear you on that.
I'll
Uh,
get past that stage. I know it'll come because 'cause I'm done after this child.
all right.
Then
Well,
I
that
can
sounds
watch
good.
grown-up TV again.
Okay. Well, You, I think, has got a very sexy killer.
Yeah,
And
yeah, Penn Badgley, I think that's what his name is. But
yeah,
I've seen a couple episodes of the first season, and it's like the he has a very strong prota protagonist, would you the I mean, the show's about him, so he's the protagonist, but he's also the
right,
bad guy as well.
right.
Yeah,
Well, that,
yeah,
that, that happens.
yeah,
It's nice. There's such a huge variety of things. You can find TV series that star just a solid, detective who's just a good person, trying to figure out, how to be good, parents and everything. So, there's a variety of things. So that's
yeah,
good.
but that's also boring sometimes. Sometimes you need a Dexter. I watched enough Dexter when before I had kids.
Right.
Sometimes you need a Dexter in your life.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Do you think that true crime is going to evolve in the future, especially in the wake of people having these concerns about the victims' families and things of that nature? Or do you think that it's going to continue the road that it's on right now?
I think it's going to continue on the road of whatever makes the most money.
That's
I
true.
think that's true of everything. I think it's true of AI. I think it's true of you name it. Whatever makes people the most money, that's the way it's going to
I mean, it really is
go.
that is really what it's about at this point. If you have a million people downloading your show and maybe the first season is, someone's like, "Hey, my sister was kidnapped. Let's talk about my sister's case." And you have the entire family on board, and then the next season you're like, "What am I going to talk about? Oh, look, here's the news.
Right.
Look,
Yeah,
25
absolutely.
years ago this girl was kidnapped. I can't find her family. Oh, well, let's just talk about it. It was 25 years ago. Who cares?"
Well, I mean, that's another interesting issue. How many of these stories, whether it be novels or books, are about young women getting killed, and it's yeah, it's you know that's whatever.
I
That
mean,
seems
a
to
lot of the
solve.
stories in true crime are young white women being killed, kidnapped, or something bad happening to them. And a lot of emphasis is now being put to light that most of these stories are about young white women and nobody's really focusing on people of color and things of that nature. And I mean, do you think there's a reason behind this?
Well, let me think about that one. You know, I was on a show once, and I proposed to the head writer. I'm not going to name the show.
Sure.
I proposed an idea to the head writer, which involved a black victim, and the head writer said, um, I hate to say it, it's ugly to say, but the head writer looked at me. I shouldn't even say it, but he said nobody gives a shit about black people. I mean, that was what he said. So I think there was certainly a feeling on TV that ratings would go down.
Yeah.
If you had a black that ratings would go down if you had a black victim. So that was sort of their feeling about it. I mean, that's all interesting questions. Now, I myself could not write a book or a novel or a TV show, about a black victim because in the culture that we live in now, if you're white, which I am, uh, you can't do that.
Yeah.
You would get be writing about another culture and you're not supposed to. And I think there are some positives about that. For me, I find it personally, I find it frustrating. I Back when I was a playwright, it wasn't as rigorous that way. And my favorite play was about a homeless Native American man I met on the streets in New York. And I'd never be able to write that. I'll show you if I can. I'll put it on here. Here's a poster about it. The play was called Sacred Journey, and it was done all over the world actually. And of all the
That's a
things I've
great
written, I'm
poster.
probably oh, thank you. Yeah, it is. Um, Done by someone in Minnesota. But yeah, of all the plays I've written, that's probably the one I'm most proud of, and or anything I've written. And I couldn't do it now. I wouldn't be able to. I wrote another play about three of the main characters were black, one was Latino, and one was white. I wouldn't be able to do that now. I wrote a play about two lesbians having a kid, and that was actually produced at lesbian theaters in San Francisco and New York. I couldn't do that now.
Yeah.
So I sort of appreciate I sort of appreciate, I think, the reasons for it, but I find it personally difficult. So, for instance, I'm writing a novel now set in the world of the WNBA. Kind of have a feeling my main character in the WNBA better be white. I think,
Are
I
you
might
gonna write
want her to
about the
be.
coach?
Yeah,
Your
I know. I
protagonist
mean,
is the white coach?
well, it's kind of tricky, but I mean, it's very complicated because let's say I have I mean, there's an FBI character too, but let's say the main WNBA character is a white woman. Okay, she's going to have teammates, right?
Mhm.
If the teammates are white, then it gets too much, right? So you know what I'm going to wind up doing? I'm going to wind up writing the black best friend. So
Oh,
it's like it's
what a stereotype that is.
I know. So it's like, but what do I do? I mean, seriously, what do I do? Well, I guess I could skip writing about the WNBA, but I really want to write about it. It's
Right.
like I want to write about it. So I mean, I guess that's my willfulness, but I have things that I care about, and I think that if I don't write what I want to write about, then I'm going to write crap. So,
Yeah.
um, I try to be open to different ideas, but this one I think is great. So anyway, I don't know. There are all kinds of things. But anyway, back to your original question: why are there more, rich white victims and rich whatever? It's just, I mean, it's just because we live in a racist country. I mean, I just think that's why.
Yeah. It's the bottom line. It's just what's gonna get news clicks when you go to Walmart and you see the poster board filled with faces of Black and Latino missing persons, but those aren't the people that make the news that are on the podcast.
Right,
It's usually wealthy or middle class young white women.
right. My novel, The Necklace, that came out 2 years ago, the star is a very working class white woman, and in a rural town. And by the way, working class is a funny word, I think, because my impulse is always to say a poor white woman or a poor person, but I've learned that I can't do that because poor is like a pejorative word in the United States. It's like we view it as like a moral issue if you're poor and an insult. So you have to use words like economically disadvantaged or working class or whatever. And my understanding is if you're in Europe or I think in England as well, I think that you can say the word poor and it's not like you're insulting somebody. But here you have to say it. So I'm going to say my hero is an economically disadvantaged white woman, and and it's a thriller, and it's amazing because there are no other thrillers. I'm exaggerating, I'm sure, but I haven't seen them. There are no other thrillers that star economically disadvantaged women. It's always someone who is like living in a big city in a glamorous industry. It might be entertainment or
Hmm.
journalism
Or they
or
own a
um,
bakery.
or they own a bakery. Yes, and it's that's glamour in its own kind of way.
Yeah.
Um, it's sort of. So, but they all, they don't have, economic problems. If it's a small town, it's always like a rich tourist town or whatever. And so that I find interesting too, just in terms of class and in terms of yeah, of why we don't, have shows about or novels about poor white people. I'm exaggerating again. There are some, but it's not as many.
Nah, I finished reading a book recently called White Trash that I think you might find interesting, where they talk about the all the different phrases about being poor in this country, and especially in the South, with that whole phrase white trash and what it actually
Uh,
where it all came from and things of that nature.
where did it come from?
Oh, basically it was you're just one step above being a slave, like in the
Ah,
social hierarchy. So
right.
basically, a lot of, you're poor, you're a sharecropper, a lot of my ancestors.
Very good.
And my dad's family's from very, 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 very rural Tennessee,
Mm.
up in the
And where does
up in the Appalachians. Because if I say Appalachians, my aunts will kick my butt.
uh, where do they live now?
Well, the aunties still live in Tennessee. My folks moved up in to Michigan
Mhm.
because my dad joined the army to escape.
Well, okay.
But so to finish out everything, so do you have any advice for people who are inspiring to write plays, novels, books, to do what you've done in your life?
Sure. Let me see if I can remember my three pieces of advice I always give people. Uh, yes, I remember them. One is uh, write. Definition of a writer is one who writes. So if one writes, then one is a writer. Second advice is read. And by that, I mean read in whatever genre you're going to write. And if you're going to write thrillers, read a lot of thrillers. If you're going to write rom-coms, read a lot of rom-coms. If you're writing a rom-com screenplay, watch a lot of rom-com movies. If you're writing a horror movies, watch a lot of horror movies. So anyway, read in the genre that you're into. And the third piece of advice I would give would be to uh, get a community. Some examples of that would be, get some everybody that you can think of that lives near you that is a writer or is interested in writing to join a writers group that meets, every 2 weeks. Take a class at uh, the place I teach, UCLA Extension, but other places too, that have really good students and teachers that sometimes the students, first of all, the class itself is a community, and then afterwards, some of the students keep hanging out and have writers groups afterwards, and that community lasts longer. Um, if you live in an area that has coffee shops where writers go to hang out, then go there, hang out, and just strike up a conversation with the other writers. Um, Whatever you can do to hang out with other writers is useful because writing is very difficult. It's good to share your struggles and hear other people's struggles, and it's also good to just share your actual words, to have a writers group and bounce them off other people. Um, so yeah, so the way I do it is I'm in two different writers groups, and I write in coffee shops, and those are probably my two main forms of community, but that's a lot. So that would be my advice: write, read, and don't be alone. Get together with people.
Yeah, Meetup is also a really good place. When I was younger, we'd use Meetup to find just new people, like because I moved a lot when I was a kid, and so Meetup's a great resource if you are afraid to go and talk to strangers. Meetup creates these groups, and you could be like, all right, I'm going to go to this place and know that all these people are going to be into writing or into really whatever you happen to be into.
You're right. That's good advice. One of my two sons, also used Meetup for that reason, for writing. So yes, I agree completely.
Yeah. Um, so before we close out, is there anything new that you're working on? Anything that you would like to share? Where can we find your books?
Oh, thank you for asking. You can find my books anywhere. Killer Story came out 2 months ago. Necklace came out last year, and as we as we record this, the writer's strike just started today.
Oh,
So I turned in a Hallmark mystery movie last night, and now I'm working on a WNBA thing. But so that's what I'm at now.
okay. And that's a TV writer strike, correct?
Yeah, TV and movie writers are on strike as of midnight last night.
Well, as somebody who's very pro union, we'll see what happens next.
Thank you. Well, it's been a pleasure talking with you.
It's been a great talking with you, and thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next week. Have a great day. Bye.